We're at the Muslim House 2026 and talking to Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi, you know, when you left MSNBC, which is not MSNBC now.
MS Now.
MS Now, it's probably the best thing ever happened to you. I think you have more of an audience than they do.
I think some of our YouTube stats would say yes, indeed. Thank you for the plug. Zeteo is the best thing that's ever happened to me professionally. So it was actually a wonderful thing to leave MSNBC at the time, go out on my own, start a media company, and be able to come to fun events like this at Sundance.
What's your critique then of the media now? I mean, in terms of news media and entertainment media.
I think the biggest issue right now, and you know this, Salam, from being in LA, is corporate consolidation. I think when you have so few rich people and rich companies running everything, whether it's big tech running social media companies, whether it's studios merging in Hollywood, whether it's news companies being owned by Disney and Paramount, the problem is we have a bunch of billionaires and corporations telling us what to think, what we see, what we hear, what we read, what we should be knowing about. That's a problem in a democracy.
And what about the people? How can we have hope?
I think the people need to support independent journalism, and I say that not just as a shameless plug for Zeteo, but go to Zeteo.com and subscribe.
That's right.
But generally, whether it's not Zeteo, whether it's Dropsite, whether it's Young Turks, whatever it is, whatever your fancy is, support independent journalism. Support those of us who are not worried about advertiser revenue or corporate sponsorship or the C-suite, who can actually speak freely about issues like genocide and racism and fascism. I think that is the way we actually keep hope alive, by having free exchange of ideas and information at a time when the fascists are trying to shut down free speech.
Okay, let's be a little more introspective now. Muslims, you know,
Gotta hate them.
we love them. We love them here, but the problem is that we're still talking to ourselves. You go to Muslim conventions, the biggest thing is the bazaar. Whoever has the biggest bazaar has the biggest convention. And then you hear a nice talk. You'll give a talk, or some other dignitary will give a nice talk. But there's not a sense of being stakeholders in America. There's not a sense that we can make impact with media or with politics. So what do you say to people who say, it's hopeless?
I don't know. I think you're being overly negative on this one. I think in recent years we've actually seen Muslim Americans stepping up across the board, not just on Palestine-related or foreign policy-related issues, which are important, rightly so, but I think in terms of civic engagement, political engagement. Look, I'm not as old as you are, but I'm old. And I've been seeing this stuff for 20, 25 years on both sides of the Atlantic. And I've been a critic like you of Muslims being introverted, inward-looking, worried about the local mosque, but not about their local elections. But I think that's changing. I think one of the silver linings of the Trump era is that it's forced Muslims to get off the couch. It's forced Muslims to get outside of the mosques. It's forced Muslims to get involved in media, in Hollywood, in communications, doing unfashionable careers, speaking in places we never used to speak at, being on the Oscars stage, being on the Emmys stage. People like Riz Ahmed, my good friend, winning Oscars and Emmys. You see films like No Other Land winning an Oscar, talking about ethnic cleansing in the middle of the Oscars. I think that change is happening. I think people in this room, in places like Sundance, are trying to make it happen. Of course we should all be doing more. Of course there's a sense of hopelessness and despair, but I do believe that Muslim Americans getting out there and running for office and making movies and starting independent media companies are trying to show the rest of the community that there is another way. We don't just have to sit back and moan and groan on Twitter and WhatsApp and complain and carp at family events or bazaars. We can actually get out there and change the world.
Now, shifting our focus to the country here, the big story is what's happening in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Renee Good, Alex Petty, killed by our own government. I mean, now people fear the government. The whole idea of the U.S. Constitution is to prevent tyranny and prevent people from fearing their own government. Where are we in terms of the Constitution and upholding the Constitution?
We're in a place now where for the past 24 hours, Iranian government supporters are sending messages saying, hey, do you want our help? We can come help you. Like, the United States of America is being trolled by repressive governments abroad because they are doing what we have criticized repressive governments abroad for doing: opening fire on peaceful protesting, beating up protesters, arresting eyewitnesses, threatening the populace, smearing dead protesters in a way that we used to criticize foreign governments for doing. It's kind of sick. It's happened quicker than even people like myself thought it would happen. I spent much of 2024 telling people, including Muslims in our community who were understandably outraged at the Democratic Party for Gaza, I spent a lot of time telling them, but the Republicans are going to destroy democracy in this country. They will destroy the right to protest for Gaza. A lot of people in our community were a little cynical, and they said they're all the same, and it won't be as bad as you say, Mehdi. It doesn't matter what happens in the election. And here we are now, where peaceful protests, whether it's in defense of immigrants, whether it's over Gaza, you saw the story that came out on Friday, Marco Rubio rescinded the visas, turned down the green cards of people like Mahmoud Khalil, Rumeysa Ozturk, because of their speech. They committed no crimes. Rumeysa Ozturk was lifted off the street on her way to an iftar because she wrote an op-ed about divesting from Israel. That's insane. That is the country we're in right now. The First Amendment's under assault. The Second Amendment, which I never used to care about, is now under assault. Right. Republicans don't care that this guy they killed in Minneapolis, well, he had a gun, but you guys said guns are fine. Concealed carry, legal. So all of our First, Second, Fourth Amendment coming into our homes, all under assault right now. So I do think we really need to bandy together and understand the nature, the existential nature of the threat to our country.
But, you know, I get you in terms of how the Republicans, and mainly it's the Trump administration, and the main problem with the Republican Party is that it has failed to be a Republican Party.
It's just a MAGA cult now.
Exactly. But for many of us, choosing the lesser of the evils by, supporting the Democrats, they don't do anything. They don't do anything to galvanize, to create enthusiasm.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
What's our message to them?
No, I'm a big critic of the Democratic Party. I've been critical of the 7 House Democrats who voted to fund ICE just the other day, and the Democratic leadership who allowed them to do that. Clearly on issues like ICE, on issues like Gaza, the Democratic Party has failed us. It has not been a strong enough opposition. When it was in government, it laid the groundwork for a lot of the abuses we're seeing now. That's a problem. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people in that party that aren't trying to do the right thing. There are people, local politicians. There are people running for mayor, a guy called Zoran Mamdani in New York. There are people running for Congress who are trying to turn things around, who are calling for restrictions on military aid to Israel, who are saying let's abolish, defund, dismantle, prosecute ICE. And I think that's the key point, right? Within the Democratic Party, there are people we can still pressure and push and collaborate with and work with. They're a minority, but they exist. In the Republican Party, it's a cult around Trump, whereby between now and this taping going out, they might kill another American. And you know what every Republican congressman will do? Blindly, they will support it. They won't ask what happened or who's to, and they'll say, that person was a domestic terrorist, we must support ICE. You live in a country like that, democracy's done in a country like that. And my big problem is that it doesn't matter what you think about the two parties. It does matter what you think about democracy, because without democracy, none of us can speak about any of the issues we care about.
Well, one of the things that also ruins democracies is war, because when war happens, then everybody has to fall in line with the government. And there's now talks about war again, this time against Iran. And nobody here is a fan of the mullahs in Iran. We all want to see change. But like Iraq, going to war in Iraq did not solve the problem. And going to war in Iran is going to make matters worse. So how can we speak to people that this is going to be even more devastating against our democracy and devastating against the people in the region?
So the advantage we have that we didn't have in 2003 is that in 2003, by the time we went to war, the public had been so propagandized and misled by George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and much of the media, the New York Times, that they went and supported that war. They thought they were WMDs. They thought Iraq was a threat. They thought they were helping the Iraqi people. We're not in that place right now. The American public is war fatigued. Even elements of Trump's own MAGA base are anti-war. So in terms of the public, we don't actually have to win that argument. The public are on our side, right? The public are on an anti-war side. The problem is the people in power, the disconnect. That's the democratic crisis we have in this country, is that the public don't support a genocide in Gaza, but Congress and the administration does. The public doesn't support invading Venezuela or invading Iran, but members of our political and media establishments do. That's the big challenge. That comes back to what can we do as citizens to organize and replace democratically, peacefully the people in power? Because that's the problem. The public are not the problem. It's the people in power who are the problem.
And then for us as Muslims, I think one of the things that we've always struggled with is this problem of sectarian division.
Yes.
And is this war going to have that sectarian aspect to it? Well, it's the Shia, they're not real Muslims, and you're going to hear Muslim voices say these are not real Muslims.
So I'm glad you asked that question. Syria, the civil war, the horrific mass killings in Syria did lead to a lot of sectarianism both in the region, and I saw some of it imported into UK Muslim and US Muslim communities. It had a huge and very negative effect on our communities, our societies here in the West. I do think that that's not going to happen this time around. I do think we've matured, evolved as a community. We're smarter than that. I'm very proud of a Muslim American community that I spend a lot of time with. I travel across the country. I go to these events. I go to those bazaars. I talk to Muslims, Shia and Sunni, the length and breadth of the US. I'm very proud of this community. I've been a Muslim American for 6 years now myself. I'm proud of the fact that we've avoided that sectarianism, and I don't think Iran will be treated in that sectarian way. I do think people get it, that this isn't about helping people on the ground. This isn't about fighting for democracy. It is about taking over resources and dividing Muslims in the region further. I also say to Muslims in America, I do think we get it, that the existential threat to our community from the white supremacists and the Republican Party is to all of us, right? The point I always make, I cannot say this often enough, the Islamophobe who pulls the hijab off a woman in the street as an act of Islamophobic violence and harassment, the Islamophobe doesn't stop to ask the woman in the street, are you a Shia or a Sunni? He just sees a Muslim. And it's interesting that the Islamophobes believe more in Muslim unity than we do.
Thank you so much, Mehdi.
Thank you.
All right.